Hi guys, here's my latest Iceland update, and it's getting more and more interesting by the day. And as we've seen it in the past, Thorvaldur Thorvaldsson, a volcanologist from the University of Iceland, seems to disagree again with the Icelandic Meteorological Office about what is happening in that magma chamber area underneath and where we could see the next eruption. But let's start with the facts that the Icelandic Meteorological Office has released, and then let's talk about the mystery of what's going on underneath and what we can expect, because we could have an eruption at the doorsteps of Grindavik or inside Grindavik. There have been many earthquake swarms south of Mount Thorbjörn at the doorsteps of Grindavik, and also west of Grindavik. Some say, is it going to Eldvörp? That's west of Grindavik that you see here in the map. But you know, the indications are not clear and it's strange, so anything is possible at the moment. But what we do know is that shallow magma chamber that's at a depth of around 4 kilometers underneath the Blue Lagoon and the Swartsengi power plant is filling up again like crazy to like the most maximum amount that it ever had since the events started on November 10th. So we're probably reaching the point of 18 million cubic meters right now. So that is basically the same amount that it had when the December eruption started. And since then, all the other events, the intrusions and the eruptions, had a lower fill amount, sometimes less than half. You see it here on that graph. The red line, that's where we are right now with the red round dot. And if you're wondering about that little ditch there, that was the solar storm, the solar flares. They highly affected the measuring instruments, the seismic measuring instruments, and the instruments that are measuring the land rise and the changes in the magma chamber. So they thought for a quick moment that the magma rise would have stopped, which is often an indication that the magma chamber has reached maximum capacity, is full, and will send the magma out for the next eruption or intrusion. But that wasn't the case, and then they quickly corrected it, but they left it in there because, well, it was measured, and I guess they're still not 100% sure, probably 99.9% that this was just an error. And but what we see now, there is a dip at the end now, so it seems to slow down. The ground uplift seems to slow down, and it is slowing down. You see the rubber band theory, right? If I stretch a rubber band, I can stretch it, and if it reaches its point of maximum elasticity, I can't stretch it any further for a moment, and then if I still keep pulling, it bursts. And the bursting event is when the magma is sent out on its way. So that little dip, if it's slowing down, something is happening, right? There are no significant earthquake swarms as of right now. I can show you the picture here with the current earthquakes. There was more on Thursday in Iceland, but since then it's slowed down again. So not a clear indication that magma's on the move. So depends how far the magma has to go. If it has to go further from that magma chamber, it needs to grind tunnels. Should it not go in the area where we have seen the last eruption, the Sutnuka crater series? And here comes the theory of Thorvaldur Thorvaldsson, because he is basically saying, or he's suspecting, well, maybe it's going somewhere else. And here comes the explanation. He still says that it is most likely that we will see the next eruption in the Sutnuka crater series, and he thinks it may take another 2 weeks before it starts. That is his estimate, and he also thinks it might be harder for the magma to get up. And let's look into this. Why does he come up with this theory? He says the magma is accumulating, is storing in this shallow storage chamber, and that's causing tension in the roof above, in the bedrocks, in the rocks that shield that magma, right? That protect it from coming up right straight up. which is not so good for the lagoonies that are having a relaxing spa day there, guys. Imagine you're swimming in that pool and then magma joins you. That's getting hot pretty quickly. Scientists, by the way, guys, they're not ruling out that this could happen. It's just less likely than all the other alternatives, and they're saying there is enough warning time because magma needs to grind up. So they think it's at least 4 hours warning time to evacuate the place. But you know what? With that volcanic system, you never know, because we know one thing, and that's what they're worried about in Campi Flegrei in Italy right now. Check out my videos about this. This is a very dire situation. It's rumbling and the residents are frightened. So I'll put the video in the end screen. By these Brady seisms, that means land uplift and land subsidence, land uplift and land subsidence. The crust wears out. So this protective layer of rocks gets more brittle. And that is the risky thing, because it opens up the way for magma to sneak its way through there, right? And eventually, if this goes on in Iceland, it's been going on for quite a while since November 10th, uplift, subsidence. It was lifting up, magma was shooting out, it was subsiding, right? So it's not out of the question. It's not the most likely scenario right now. So he says magma is collecting in the shallow chamber, but because of that tension, that's why he says we're seeing these earthquakes that are released and that we see in the Sutnuka crater series, and maybe that's the reason for these earthquakes that we're seeing at the doorsteps of Grindavik, like south of Mount Thorbjorn and west of Grindavik. He thinks the next eruption, should this thing erupt again, will be similar to the eruption that has ended on May 9th and has started on March 16th. That was the longest of all these eruptions that we've seen there since November 10th. They usually did last just a few days and then they died off. This one was going strong. And he says, although the amount of magma is like very, very small in that shallow magma chamber compared to other eruptions that Iceland had in the past, this magma chamber controls the duration of the eruption more than the actual power of the eruption. So he thinks it could be that the next eruption will start out more powerful, maybe with the same power than the one that started on December 18. That was quite powerful because there was about the same amount in the magma chamber. But he says, again, if the eruption is strong at the beginning, it will die down quickly and ease out. But the problem is, well, these few days or hours where the eruption is so strong, the lava flows the furthest and the fastest. And we have seen, even in the January eruption and the one after, the lava flows over the main access road for Grindavik and the Blue Lagoon and the power plant. Grindavik has flown there twice, has destroyed critical infrastructure, heat that goes out to the southern Sudurns area, the southern Reykjanes Peninsula. Homes were without heat for a few days, has destroyed electric lines and stuff like this. And it depends on how close to Grindavik it is. It could breach the defense walls and flow right into Grindavik, because the last eruption, since it lasted so long, the lava did flow super fast and reached a lot of areas just in a few hours. It almost flew over Suðurstrandarvegur, the road that leads out east out of Grindavik, and almost did flow over this road and into the sea. And if it goes into the sea, it could be explosive if magma mixes with water and could form chlorine gas, toxic gases. So they were worried about this, but it did stop a few hundred meters before there. But it was flowing along the defense walls. And then as time went on, it was building layers on top of each other so that it's now higher in some places than the outer ring of the defense wall. So if the next lava shoots out with a lot of force, which he expects, it can flow quickly and then like a waterfall down the defense walls. So if it erupts in the same area again, they think that they are prepared because they're building a second row of defense walls inside between the old defense walls and Grindavik. So should there be a breach, that they can divert it again. But if it erupts south of Mount Thorbjorn, this is a different story, right? We will have to wait and see what happens then. So one thing he points out is, if he compares it with the past eruptions, the one in 2014, for example, it's a small amount of magma that has accumulated in the shallower storage layer to, for example, he thinks that in that shallow magma chamber, and this is cubic kilometers now, not cubic meters, 0.01 to 0.02 cubic kilometers. But for example, in the Holugaon eruption, it was 1.2 cubic kilometers. So a lot more. But, you know, in my opinion, yes, great, that's good. But still, at the beginning of each eruption, this fast flowing lava is threatening the infrastructure and has proven to destroy infrastructure. Remember, in January, 3 homes have burned down. So he also thinks by these intrusions and eruptions that all went down into the Sutnuka crater series, basically, originally that 15-kilometer long magma dike was formed on November 10th. 15-kilometer long, goes through the Sutnuka crater series, goes underneath Grindavik and into the sea. And by the way, a lot of residents have said that they could hear the magma grinding. They could hear it when that tunnel was forming. This came with a massive earthquake swarm and higher range earthquakes. And we have talked about the sound that one guy recorded in Naples area, that magnitude 4.4 earthquake. It was a strange sound. And then some of my viewers replied and said, well, in Iceland, we could hear it, right? So imagine that. That is quite scary. Like a 15-kilometer long warm monster of magma is grinding its way underneath your house where you live, and you don't know, will it come up, will it not come up? Well, they were affected, the residents were affected by the earthquakes. I think that's what they were worrying about most. I don't think at that time on November 10th they were aware that what's going on, but they could hear something coming. Now afterwards they know, oh wow, what we heard or felt, that was the magma rumbling, building that tunnel underneath us. So these tunnels have been used quite often since then for these eruptions and intrusions. So it's a little bit of a chaos down there. And then whenever an eruption dies down, it clogs up the tunnel. So it's not that there's like clear path. It's really destroyed in a way. So what he is saying is it's a mess. This magma corridor has become a mess. The main volume of the magma is in the deeper magma chamber. You see it here in the graph, the magma reservoir. That is at a depth of over 8 or even 12 kilometers. So there, in there, that is massive. That guy is big. So he says there's tens of millions of cubic meters of magma in there. And it seems there is a small leak that is leaking that magma up to that shallow magma chamber under Swartsengi, and then from there into the Sutnuka crater series. So that deeper magma reservoir definitely has enough magma in it to torture the Reykjanes Peninsula for decades or even centuries to come. And that's the problem here. This peninsula has woken up from basically an 800-year dormancy, and experts are saying what we're seeing now, this could last for years, decades, centuries, and that's why this is so problematic. And what he says is that the magma that came out in the previous eruptions was then relatively, or has become through processes relatively like gluey or like more like dense, so that it could clog up the corridor. It's more like, I'm missing the word that I wanted to describe it, like a chewing gum like, so it could clog up systems. And since we know that magma always takes the way of least resistance, it could cause a problem, because if the magma can't find an easy way in the Sudnuka crater series, it might look for other pathways or even build a new pathway to somewhere else. And here we come into the picture again, south of Mount Thorbjorn maybe, inside Grindavik maybe, west of Grindavik, Altwerp, who knows, right? So he also says, as a result of this clogging up, it's more difficult for the magma to come to the surface. That's why the magma might be looking for other ways. And of course, then it may take longer for the magma to break through the surface. And maybe that's why he says he thinks it'll take more the time frame of 2 weeks. And in light of that, they were talking about restoring Grindavik. You hear me right? Repairing Grindavik. And if you think that doesn't make sense, right? Why are they talking about this right now? Since there's it could be completely wiped out any day, but you know, a lot of things don't make sense. So listen, they want to repair Grindavik. We're talking about this, but also the police chief of Sudorns has said something about the area in Grindavik, and that is really significant. He says, we do not recommend that residents stay in the town. And that makes sense, right? Because there is great uncertainty about where the next eruption will be and what will be the consequences for Grindavik. Of course, he's saying, we're like everyone else. We're just waiting for something that will happen and when it happens, right? One thing is clear, the chances for a new eruption are increasing day by day. And it could erupt with little to no warning if it's erupting in the same area again. And then, you know, they need about 45 minutes to an hour to evacuate Grindavik and the Blue Lagoon and the power plant. But the power plant is quite proactive. They moved their offices since the event took place on November 10th. So they're controlling this remotely. They have as little people as possible in that hazard area. This area is part of the hazard map, while the neighbor that gets the water from the power plant, the Blue Lagoon, is hauling in the tourists, as many as they can. And they're not evacuating proactively and closing that place down. They will wait again for the last minute until you see the eruption, until the sky is red, and then they will evacuate the people. Again, right? Watch my previous videos about that. There you can see videos that tourists filmed of the evacuations where the sky is red and scary faces and they're running. It's a gong show. I'm very angry about this. But the police chief of Sudorns says we do not recommend that residents of Grindavik stay in town. And I think that people really should take into account the current situation and what the scientists are saying. But the activities in the town are ongoing. It's still the same as they have been for a while. There's some business owners that went back, of course, the port, the fish processing plants, and there are about 30 homes that are occupied by residents again. So something is going on. He also speaks about the tourists. Some tourists have been trying to get to in the area of the last eruptions, and he points out again that for safety reasons, if there's a new eruption, they don't want to allow people to go there, because there's also like it could erupt in other areas. There could be a new fissure opening, but there could also be lava flow, but also the toxic air pollution is of great concern. He says Grindavik is close to everyone other than emergency responders, town residents, employees of the town, companies that are in the town, contractors, and those who need to help the residents. So quickly, they were talking about, or they were making estimates about what it would cost to repair Grindavik, you know, to fill up all the cracks, all the sinkholes, first investigate all these cracks, really measure them tightly. How deep are they? How wide are they? You can't just go there and start filling up. We've seen this, I believe it was January, when the worker who had the task to fill up these cracks, and they already had filled up these cracks with material, and then one guy, he was basically hardening the material and compacting it, and then all of a sudden he fell into that crack. The crack opened up again and he fell and he vanished. They couldn't find him. They were searching for him for days. So what actually happened, the crack was deeper than they thought. So they were filling material and there was like a bank or something, like a balcony sticking out in that crack where all the filled up material was held. And then when he started compacting it, that bank broke and then everything was sliding down even further. And then they found out when they were actually going in there looking for the worker that it's like 100 feet deep or even more, and then that there's a lake underneath, and that seemed to have been connected with other cracks underground. And it seems that that worker had been washed out from there because they couldn't find him in that lake. They had underwater drones and everything, and they searched for quite a while. And then they were lucky that they just stopped the search, got the rescuers out of that crack when the next eruption started with an earthquake swarm. So that crack could have collapsed and buried these workers. So they really need to know what they're doing, and they really need to be sure that they know the dimensions of these cracks before they fill them. But the issue is, it's like Fraggle Rock. If you start repairing now and then you have the next event or stronger earthquakes again, the cracks could get wider, longer, new sinkholes, new cracks could form. And especially if you start repairing the infrastructure as well, like the electricity cables, hot water pipes, sewer pipes. I mean, they have done a lot of repairs so that it's somewhat functional, but they say the town's not livable at the moment, right? That's why people are leaving. They're selling their homes to the government so that they can live somewhere else. So it's a little bit, what do they want? I thought they were giving up the town. It seems like it's still in the drawer to revive the town. So it cost them billions of Icelandic kronas to repair that town. So that's why, thankfully, the consensus right now is, or the advice right now is, wait, what's happening next? Because then you spend that money and then you start all over again. So guys, this was a quick update. Check out my videos about Campi Flegrei in Italy, because this could be a super volcano with dire consequences for the whole world. So scientists are saying the world might have only food left for 74 days. So this is crazy. And this super volcano has caused many ice ages in the past because it can spew out so many particles in the air that the sun is blocked, that nothing grows. So very dire. But even if it's a smaller eruption, this thing is basically right in the greater Naples area with millions of people. And to evacuate all of them, you guys, you know, and the officials know it's not possible. So there's a lot of tension going on right now. So I'll put the video in the end screen. Check it out, guys. Please leave this video a like. It helps my channel a lot. And if you're new here, please subscribe. I would like to see you again, guys. So I have to get out, take care of my farm right now, and then I'll be back, and probably in a few hours you will see another update about Campi Flegrei in Italy, because there's more news and more recordings about what happened with this largest earthquake that they had there in 40 years. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you very soon. Bye bye.